Welcome back to the Midlife Maverick podcast. I'm Stretch Trainer, your host, and today the conversation is one that was pretty eye-opening. I'm joined by Sophia Torrini, a certified clinical EFT practitioner, reality hacking expert who's trained under Dr. Joe Dispenza. I'll be honest, when I first read her profile, I didn't fully understand what half of that meant. But after chatting with her, I walked away with a complete different perspective on how emotions, stress, and even our thoughts can affect our health and our physical body. Sophia shared her story of going from a near-death experience and 16 years of chronic illness to complete transformation, not through medication, but through emotional freedom techniques, or EFT, and something she calls metaconsciousness. We dive into what EFT actually is, why emotions get stored in the body, how tapping helps release these emotions, and how practices like heart-brain coherence can help you regulate stress and reconnect with purpose. For any man who's been living stuck inside his head, pushing harder, or trying to just soldier on, this episode is going to help you understand why that's not working anymore and how to start feeling again. So let's dive in. Sophia, welcome to the Midlife Maverick podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on your show.
I'm excited, and I'm also very curious because a lot of what's in your profile I've never heard of before. So I'm going to be interested to learn more about emotional freedom techniques, reality hacking, and metaconsciousness.
Okay. So I'll start.
But before we dive in, I usually start my podcast with a couple of questions. So I'm going to hit you with these two first, and then we'll jump in. If you and I were to be boarding an airplane, where would that plane be going? Do you have a favorite holiday destination, or is there a bucket list item you'd love to tick off?
Well, I have a favorite place. So favorite is Brazil, but I do want to go to Australia and I want to come scuba diving. And Australia and New Zealand would be the two places I would like to visit that I haven't.
Awesome. I'm a massive scuba fan myself. Is there something in particular, Great Barrier Reef? Is that where you'd like to hit up in Australia? Yeah, amazing part of the world, and also I'd recommend Ningaloo as well, which is over on the west coast. Not so well known, but also a very magical place, Ningaloo Reef, if you do get here.
And I'd like to go near a kangaroo, but I heard that they bite or they're not that friendly. But I'd like to go near them.
Well, some of the ones that are more tame, you can definitely get close to and pat, but I wouldn't pat one in the wild, that's for sure. Okay, so if you were coming to Australia and you and I were to catch up and we were to have a conversation about, your mission and your passion right now, what would that be?
Mission is pretty much to empower and guide people and know that they have choices to change what they're experiencing, whether it's health or anything else. And what we've been told in the traditional model is actually very limiting. We have a lot more power than we thought about. And that was a big shock for me as well. But it is the truth. And I have a happier life versus to be part of a system. And anywhere you look in the world, everybody is drained and stressed out. And there are some people who are thriving right now because, they're ahead of us on these concepts and these principles.
I'm looking forward to talking about these principles because I've been one of those people that has suffered burnout myself, always striving, always pushing, wanting to achieve more. And I think that society pressure is on us, especially men, as we push ourselves as the provider all the time. Before we sort of tap into, your expertise and what you do, I always like to start with a little bit of a story. So I'd like to know your backstory. What got you to where you are today?
Okay, so I'm pretty much like everybody else. I came from overseas. I came to the States, and I wanted to be successful and climb the ladder. I always had an interest in healthcare, and for whatever reason, also I did some stuff with network engineering and computers. I didn't really work in the field. I did some little jobs, but healthcare was my thing. I really wanted to help people heal and what makes them heal. And at first, I was happy till I actually saw the system doesn't work very well. And then I had a health challenge that almost cost my life. And I was not expected to live. And it was very difficult navigating that system. And once I got out and once I lived, I ended up with a health challenge that dragged out for a little over 16 years. And I couldn't put my finger around it, but I kept on asking the same question. How can a super healthy person overnight be expected to die? It just, something must have gone wrong in this picture that I'm not aware of. And I finally got the answers a little more than the 16 years. And that's where meta consciousness came in, which is, some people may know it as German New Medicine. And it gave me a lot of answers what happened. I started using these principles, EFT, and some of the teachings of Dr. Joe Dispenza. And eventually I got off all of my meds and my health restored, and I was happier. The anxiety that I was having and the stress I was having. I'm not saying my life is perfect, so I don't want to give the idea that everything is, fluffy out there. But I'm definitely at a much happier place. I'm not affected so much by the outer world. I can self-regulate, maybe not immediately, but within a day, where it would take me months and years to self-regulate on certain things. And I don't take any meds. And
Wow.
I'm
Well,
pretty happy. I go biking every day. I love helping clients now without any side effects. The sadness I had in healthcare, and I witnessed, they would take these drugs, or there would be so many surgeries, and they would end up having to sell all of the stuff to pay those bills. But the side effects was terrifying. And the side effects didn't always show up right away. It would be 5 years later. And my degree's in epidemiology, and I had a second experience where they were going to remove my uterus. And I said, over my dead body. And I said, I'm going to have a uterine prolapse. I would have had a bladder prolapse, because once you take the uterus out, the bladder falls down. And I said, I'm not willing to do that. And eventually I found another method where I didn't have to remove and have a hysterectomy.
wow. Wow. Fascinating. What a story. When you reflect back now, like if you look back before your diagnosis of your sickness, what can you see? Can you see anything that maybe led to that?
Yes. Well, there's a couple of things. I was very, very stressed. Um, and the stress caused me and put me in survival. But I do believe, and it may sound strange to your audience, we co-create, or we are creators of our reality. And I remember saying all the time, I can't take the situation. I just want out. I can't take the situation. I just want out. And all of a sudden, something happens, and I have an exploratory surgery, and they say you have 2 days to live. So I realize now, it took me a while. I had to clear a lot of emotions, that my negative state, there was something that had happened in my life that I didn't know how to process emotionally. I was disconnected from my body. I had no clue how to process emotions and sadness and grief. And all I kept on doing, I had a girlfriend. We'd talk 2 hours every day on the phone, and I just kept on ruminating on the same stuff. I went to work, of course, and I did everything else, but I was always ruminating on the same story, kept on saying the same thing. I want out. So the universe gave me, okay, here, you want out? Right here. 2 days to live. You make your choice.
Wow. Yeah. So how did you start to change that inner critic or that inner voice that was telling you that?
I didn't change that right away. What happened was, luckily enough, I lived, and don't want to go into the details of the hospital experience, because these were people that I worked for, and there was no support for me. I somehow survived after 23 days, but I had a lot of ailments. And I was wise enough to end up at the Mayo Clinic. For whatever reason, I was refusing year after year to remove my organs. because they kept on saying, this organ has to go and this is the only treatment. And my father was in dentistry and he kind of believed in self-healing or some form that the body can heal a bit, not full-blown healing. And I kept on asking, can you explain how a healthy individual that had nothing, you do an exploratory surgery, you find nothing, and now is at their deathbed with not a chance to live and all my organs are shutting down? And I was never getting he says, it's just idiopathic. It's just something happened to you. Your system just decided to shut down. And that answer never satisfied me. So I did suffer for a long time. And I did like the treatment that I did get at the Mayo. At least it was conservative. It didn't heal me, but they started implanting the idea that maybe your stress has something to do with this for the first time. They were just delicate about it. They didn't go full blown saying that, which was nice because I don't think I was ready at the time to hear that. And then I started reading. I had read some stuff when I got sick, and I read all the stuff. They made a lot of sense to me, and I immediately shut it off. I don't know why and how. I read like 98 books on how the brain and body works, and I just blocked it as if it's impossible. And then, of course, now the years have passed, and I'm sick and tired of having the symptoms. Now I'm functioning, working, but, these challenges. So I started reading Dr. Joe Dispenza's book, and immediately I had heard of him before, I had read him before, and I discarded him. He made absolutely complete sense. I was into it. I could recite everything that was in the book, but he would say, you need to master your emotions. If you master your emotions, you master your creations, and you can't become the old self. And I could not figure out for the life of me what that was. And I was very stubborn. And I had gone to some events, and some people were very nice, and they would say, analysis paralysis, get out of your head. And I just could not grasp it. So I decided, I found this lovely woman, very tough. I would call her the German Gestapo, but a very good practitioner. I think I needed something so tough. I mean, she was relentless. And we started tapping for 7 days a week. And boy, did I start having anxiety. Did panic start coming up? Did all the experience of dying start to come up? It was, my emotions were a roller coaster. And then 18 months later, I started changing and things were making a lot of sense. I was able to I had started meditating, but I couldn't still my mind. And things were coming into flow. And then she, kind of suggested, you want to go back to healthcare. And she kept on saying, you can have a good income. And I was having resistance. I just can't go back. He says, well, you have nothing to, no work. And we would tap on it and that wouldn't clear. And I would just get angry. And I said, I'm not going back there. I says, well, you have to find something. So she nicely said, I'm going to be assisting on one of these EFT classes. Why don't you just take the course and see if you like it? She was very smart. So I said, okay. I took the course. It made a lot of sense. I'm tapping throughout the course. The trainer thought there was something wrong with me. She intervened and said there's nothing wrong with her. Because at this point, I still had a lot of emotions and I was getting triggered. And they were talking about childhood trauma, which I had a lot. And I kind of waited a few weeks. I said, okay, the course was great. She says, why don't you take the test? I said, okay, I'll take the test. I took the test. I passed it with flying colors. And she says, well, you have nothing to lose to do the clients, to do the certification. So I did. And then a client appeared after I got certified. And I did it pretty fast, in like lightning speed. And I passed with kind of flying colors because it was making sense, but I couldn't picture myself for doing it because it didn't have all the degrees that I supposedly had. And I said, who's going to think of this? And this client shows up out of nowhere, and she becomes my first client, and I started seeing changes in her. And that was the turning point. She literally came completely depressed, and I'm teaching her EFT, and I'm also teaching her how the reality is getting created. And she's keeping notes, and she's manifesting better than me. And the student had become better than the teacher, and she'd be more motivated than me. And then I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do.
Awesome.
And that's how I ended up with this. But I still have, along the way, tapping by itself was helping me, but I wasn't picking the patterns. So German New Medicine or meta consciousness says that all health conditions is a lowering of frequency, like Dr. Joe teaches, but there's a biological track that gets triggered. And so each organ has a biological track. And when I mapped out my childhood and I mapped out the hospital experiences, it explained why everything went wrong into the hospital and why I was expected to die. So that it made so much sense. And I found it miraculous. And it's been out for years. It just hasn't been popularized. It's not something that's new.
Not something that's mainstream. I want to dive into more about what emotional freedom techniques are. So if I'm someone that hasn't and never heard of that, can you explain that to me?
Yes, it's a combination of cognitive psychotherapy and then tapping on the body's meridians. So we have a lot of meridians that we tap, and it's acupuncture without needles. But let's discuss, and the only reason it's called, the version I've been trained is clinical, is because it's evidence-based. And you actually have the biggest person in Australia doing it. Her name is Peter Stapleton at Bond University. She's pretty famous for it. So let's explain why it works. So all disease is considered to be a lowering of frequency. So when emotions get blocked in the body, then the signals between the cells gets altered. So every time you have an experience, your limbic brain, you have your neocortex, your limbic brain, and your cerebellum. The limbic brain is in charge of your autonomic nervous system, where all your functions work. It produces chemistry. And if you don't feel it and process it, that chemistry gets stored in the body. And through the years, because we were never taught to feel with our bodies, we can say, I'm angry, and you feel it in your head, but not in your body as sensation. That energy gets stored and causes blockages in the body. So the physical act now of tapping by verbalizing and feeling the energy, that is a key component, feeling the energy and the tightness and the anxiety or whatever it is, it then makes it release. Why? Because energy can never be created or destroyed. It has to be transmuted. So whatever you had stored since you were 5 or 3 that you did not process because it had information for you, now it has to be released. And that's what causes the healing. It's the release of energy, and emotions is what holds limiting beliefs. A lot of people go, well, I have to get rid of my limiting beliefs. Well, it's the emotion that is holding the limiting belief. So there are thousands of limiting beliefs, but if you release, let's say, fear, you can knock off 10, 15 limiting beliefs. So that's why it's better to address the emotions. And a copy of emotion is stored in the brain. La Violette, 1988, proved it. And Candace Perth also proved that the body is the subconscious mind. So a copy is stored in the brain, and a second copy is stored in the body. For example, kidneys usually hold fear. I'll give you something from meta consciousness. Pneumonia, I know people are going to argue it's a bacterial infection, the real lowering frequency is a life-threatening message you receive that you have a condition that you may not live, and then feeling powerless to it. As a result, it's going to make you very hard to breathe. And that needs to be cleared. Digestive issues, depending what it is. If it's constipation, you can't let go. I can't let it go. So the intestine gets stuck, or nothing's moving in your life because you're so angry or whatever it is. So then nothing's going to move in your intestinal tract. So it gives us, German New Medicine or metaconsciousness gives us the biological track, and then we can map it up with some memories, because all your beliefs are based from your early childhood experiences. You develop them from your first trimester. It's usually till about 7. I extend it to 13. And why did it happen that way? I'll give a very simple explanation, because you had different brain waves. So when you were born, babies sleep, so they're in delta brain waves. Then they go to theta, and then they go to alpha. Guess what? Those 3 brain waves is what hypnotists use to hypnotize you. So the baby on its own, as it's growing up, the child is getting programmed unknowingly and unwillingly without its consent. And then you created all your beliefs there, and now they play out later in life. After 13, actually, depending on the person, could be 7, your beta brainwaves come in. So your judgment and your analytical thinking comes in, and you could just say, okay, that's happening there and it's not affecting me. But before that, you don't have a filter for that. So that's how EFT works in a nutshell. And I wanted to address one more thing. So traumatic memories are stored in the hippocampus. And even if you're not thinking of them, if there's a stimulus or a response, an emotion and a trigger, it's going to replay in your head. And a lot of people are not aware of it. So it's happening unconscious. The reason they get stuck in the hippocampus, because traumatic memories don't get time stamped properly to be filed. So with EFT, we actually process them, remove the emotion from the memory, because memories are stored also between 2 neurons, and then it gets filed in your neocortex, where if I asked you, what did you eat a month ago at this time? You say, well, I don't remember. Well, that's what we want to do with traumatic memories as well.
Very interesting. It sounds very powerful. And it sounds like, I think some people would be like, oh, what do you mean? How can this be the case of emotions causing disease? But I think there's a lot of research out there that if we're holding a lot of emotions and there's a lot going on in our body, it is a state of disease or dis-ease. We're not allowing ourselves to sort of process that. So by the sounds of it, emotional freedom techniques is a way to, would you say, reprogram the brain?
That's correct. It's a first way to actually feel them in the safe modality and then reprogram the mind. Absolutely. Because then you tap afterwards, what do you want? And I'll put in the hacking reality here, but let's make a caveat. Let's say I'm in fear. And the body doesn't know the difference when you go into fear, if it's by a real life experience or by thought alone. By watching a scary movie on TV, you can activate fear. So thought and watching something can activate an emotion. We know that from a neuroscience point of view. So if the fear system has been activated, which activates the sympathetic nervous system, you'd be wanting to run, flee, or hide, right? If you were now tapping on fear, there's no tiger here. So the body's starting to rewire. There's no danger, because you can't be physically tapping if there was a physical threat. Let's say there's a fire in here. I wouldn't be saying, oh, even though I'm so afraid, there's this fire going on, I'm safe right now, right? So the act of tapping changes the brain waves, and the physical touch here is going to give a different system, and we're starting to rewire a new neural pathway. So what we have to do, because a lot of people go to affirmations and they follow the law of attraction. You cannot put lipstick on a pig. Okay. So, or let's say you were doing a garden. You can't leave the weeds and plant the garden. So in EFT, first, we start removing the limiting emotions with the beliefs. So you have to clean your soil, your garden, before you plant something. And that's what we do. And EFT can do both. Now, where does hacking reality come? So if it's a memory that I kept on replaying in my head, I just worked actually with someone who was raped. And she can now play the image forward and backwards with no emotional charge. She's in her 60s, and up till this point, she had been to therapy. No one told her, I mean, these here in the US, these modalities are popular. No one told her she could clear the emotion from it. And we have a few techniques in EFT that we can. And then after the emotion is cleared, we can rewrite the memory that she was safe and she's protected. And if you keep on replaying that, that's going to create a neural pathway. Why? Because what fires together wires together, but also what no longer fires together, what no longer wires together, no longer fires together. So we do the pruning first, and we have to drain the emotion. You cannot change it if there's an emotional charge. And where does the emotion get stored? It's always stored in the body. That's why when you have anxiety, there's this knot. It just comes out of nowhere. And then we run into our head and we do stories because we feel very uncomfortable. We can't sit still because the bodily sensation is what's very uncomfortable for most of us.
Awesome. I like that analogy of the garden. And like you sort of said, pulling out the weeds first before we're putting in the plants or creating the new connections. You bring up an interesting point. You bring up the point of being able to, I suppose, understand the emotion, or you've got to be able to, it sounds like you've got to be able to connect with that emotion before we can start to take action. Is that correct?
Correct. In the beginning, the person is not going to know exactly what they're feeling. And with a little practice, they just know it's a knot here or a heaviness here or in my head. And by you putting your awareness, you're putting, without forcing it to leave, you're observing it and tapping, the energy eventually leaves. And sooner or later, you know what the emotions are. Because when I started, she kept on saying, my practitioner, I'm angry. And I didn't know because I'd never verbalized my anger. And the anger was running in my head. And boy, was I angry. I was really angry with whatever has happened. And with men, sometimes it's a little harder. So usually men who come to me have anxiety. So anxiety is not a single emotion. It's usually a number of emotions, but the bigger issue with anxiety is taking the past and projecting it onto your future. And people think anxiety is a raw emotion. It could be anger or fear or something else, and you're taking your past and projecting it out. So the person I'm working with had for a long time, every week, it's a knot in the stomach, a knot in the stomach. And then he would disassociate or have attention deficit disorder, which is an overload in the system. It's like your alarm system is off. And finally now, and we're not talking years, we're just talking, maybe 2 months, his anger is coming up. And now his guilt is coming up. And he's learning to be comfortable in the body. And as he does that, all the other stuff is going to fall off. Because the alarm, it's one alarm. The anxiety is actually more than one alarm going on. It's a lot of emotions going on. And so when there's only one alarm, you know how to fix it because you know where it's coming from. When you have 5 alarms and there's an overload, you can't figure out where to go and where to start. So yes, with a little practice, but there has to be willingness. And 90% of the people are willing, but there's a small percentage because they're not feeling safe. And it's not because they don't want to, but that's when we have to overcome this bodily sensation a little bit to sit with it, not forever, not till eternity, but just a little bit. So then the body knows, okay, he or she is learning how to do that. And then the body will release it because the body is protecting you based on its old programming.
So it comes back to changing that programming. I think, like most men, we're just taught to bury those emotions. We're tough on the outside. We don't want to show weakness. We don't want to cry. We're just told to soldier on. So I'm curious, like for the men listening, how do they start to connect with their emotions, or what do you find as a useful sort of starting tool for them to be able to maybe feel their body in that sense?
I give a couple of tools. One is just to do a body scan and observe. Not a deep, half hour, whatever, because you can't start at that. So you do a small body scan, and then maybe after a week or two, just observe where the knot is and ask it if it has a message for you. You'd be surprised that you get a message. The other thing they can do is tap on their lower frequency emotions. So I start them with that. And then I ask them, maybe by the second or third week, I ask them, how would they like to be their life differently? So I first get them to stay a little while in the happy memory. So first I get them in the happy memory. I always do a happy memory, or I do brain and heart coherence from the Heart Math Institute. I can explain what that is in a second. But I start them with a happy memory. They step into the memory, they feel the memory, and then I ask it to radiate that energy and then fill their body. Sooner or later, this client already can feel a buzz in his heart because we have an energy center here, and when it gets activated, some people feel it pulsing. For me, it rotates, or I feel this nice, I love this energy here. So what I do is I use a good memory. Everybody has one good memory that they're happy with. So I have them do that. And then a lot of times I'll say, okay, how would you feel if you had achieved this? How would your life be that? And I have them do a little mental rehearsal. And I have a short meditation, which is not mine, is one from Dr. Joe that he gave for free, where they actually see their future selves in front of them, and they put that version by feeling it in their heart, and then they put their heart in their future self. So they're starting to activate the heart center. And that's how I get them, because they may not have good experiences. The last 30 years could have been miserable, but they have one or two memories that they love. And that's actually what I did for myself. I had some good memories in the past. I used the heart math. They had a little device where you clip it on your ear and it measures heart rate variability. And it on my app, I had to get coherence. So I did brain and heart coherence with my breathing. It drove me nuts in the beginning. I couldn't get it. It was beeping. It was driving me nuts. But it took me maybe a month or two. I got there. Now I don't need the device. I just go to a happy memory and then I radiate it. Or I can use breathing too. Breathing is very helpful. I mean, you've been a trainer, so if you slow down your breathing and you do abdominal breathing slowly, the body starts feeling safe.
Can you just go back to that heart math thing and just sort of talk to us about why is that important? Why is it important to be able to have that heart math?
Okay, so when your brain and heart are not coherent, the body is going to be very stressed, and you're going to be in what we call survival mode. You don't make good choices. That was the reason I made that wrong choice years ago that cost my life. I just believed what everybody else was telling me when my own intuition was saying a different thing. So when we are in survival, and that you can easily figure it out when your brain waves are high. So high beta brain waves or too much analysis will put you in survival, and you're going to make the wrong choice because we always see the worst case scenario, doom and gloom, and there's no hope. Number two, when we change the brain waves and we have coherence between the brain and the heart starts feeling safe, and the heart gives us the message, maybe this is not a good idea. There's some old spiritual teachings that say the heart knows. So the heart never gives you two choices. It gives you one. It says no, or it says yes. The mind will give you, well, you could do this, maybe you should do this, maybe you should do that, and now you've expended all your energy. So when we're brain and heart coherent, the beat of the heart, the variability of the heart is coherent, and it also activates the parasympathetic nervous system as well, and it turns off the survival system. And the Heart Math has done extensive research on it, and we definitely know that we can change our own heart variability by doing that. And you also have more energy when you're in brain and heart coherence. You're actually depleted when your heart rate variability is off, which is very important as well.
Yeah, I love that. It's an interesting sort of concept, isn't it, about the heart rate variable and being able to slow that down. I feel like most of us are walking around in that stress state. We're always in that, that sympathetic state, that fight or flight mode. And I assume that most of us are running around with that brain and heart connection not where it needs to be. When you start to bring up these emotions, when we start to connect and we start to feel this, you're talking about letting go of those emotions. What do we see? What do people start to experience at that point?
They experience more ease in their body. They say they're lighter. And if they're physical symptoms, they start changing. Sometimes for some people, they change a little bit, and for some, they're dramatic. For me, my symptoms didn't change, but I felt lighter, and a couple of themes for me changed. I naturally, because my practitioner didn't say a word, I naturally forgave many things that happened with my mother. And I had a lot of compassion, and I realized why she did it, where before I thought she deliberately did it. So there was a big change. And there was one experience which I had as a child that I thought that I wasn't important for my father. And when we cleared, because he had to stay behind when we moved, it's not that he didn't love me, but I had perceived, well, if he's not important to go with his kids, obviously I'm not important. And I do remember that was the first time I saw the belief leave, and I felt his love, even though both parents were dead at the time. And I saw a major change, and I naturally started forgiving, which was a good thing. It took me a while to forgive the hospital, but I did forgive that as well. And then I realized that's how the system is. That's how they work. They don't see it any different. And I was part of that system as well. So I know why it works, but I was angry for a long time. And, how could they do it? How could they miss this? And it just all the stories. At the end of the day, it was eating up my own energy. And it helped me with grief. I had a situation where I lost my partner, and I thought for the life of me, I would never get over grief. It took me longer than I wanted, but now I realize that's the choice that soul made, and I respect that.
Sounds like you've been through very transformative experiences with all of that. And I'm glad that you've shared that with us, because I think there'd be a lot of people that can relate to a part of your life going through the experiences that you've been through. But also, I feel there's been a huge identity shift for you from someone that worked in healthcare and believed in that system to then go into something that a lot of people might think is a bit woo woo. But, you know, you've stepped out of the health system and into this system, and you've embraced the journey, and you've seen incredible results from that. So I thank you very much for sharing that story with us. It's very powerful.
Well, no, thank you for asking. And in the old days, I would have fallen apart during, this interview, but I decided to see why it works. And then that's why I wanted to credit Peter Stapleton, because she's with Dawson Church. They've done over 300 studies or peer-reviewed studies where they found EFT downregulates 6 stress genes, and one of them is cortisol. So, people may not believe that disease is a lowering of frequency, but we know now stress, if they don't believe in anything else, we know stress will make your body work haywire. And I've been doing something as an experiment. I started losing my vision after the hospital experience. And at the time, I associated it with high doses of cortisol and prednisone that I was given. It will damage your vision. And it got to the point where I wear contacts. It was almost like I can't see anything without my contacts. And I started tapping. So I used German New Medicine plus tapping. This eye was almost +5. It went down to 4. Was it 4? 4. It went down to 4. Then I had a loss. I had grief. It went up to 425. And about 3 weeks ago, it dropped to 325. So I'm working on clearing those because I do monovision. So I'm working on clearing, and I'm finding the memories, and I'm going to certain memories, and I'm seeing that there's a charge. I didn't want to see. It was too painful for me to see, or I never wanted to experience it. And as I'm clearing it and the emotions are being stirred up, this clear. Now, it didn't clear overnight, but we're not talking 20 years either.
So there sounds like there's a lot that we can do when we start to tap into these emotions. You're talking about fixing your eyesight there, and we're talking about disease earlier, and you touched on physical pain, like maybe I'm storing back pain or something like that. So is there this belief that we can just work on our emotions and work on these techniques, and whether it's disease, whether it's physical pain, whether it's even loss of sight, we have the potential to start to reverse something like that? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and Dr. Dispenza has taken it further. So he actually has now all the research. He uses a little different approach. I still use meditation. So the only thing I do different is he tells you need to master your emotions. He doesn't give you how to get there. But if you do the mental rehearsal and you can be in the new elevated state of being, and well, actually, if you've cleared your garden first, you go into the elevated emotions and you do the mental rehearsal. He has research now that proves the body heals. So his research I've seen completely blind people see. I've seen completely paralyzed people walk, and he's had terminal cancer patients tumors heal. And I've had my own experiences, which is how I started believing. I healed completely at one event in less than an hour, but then I lost the healing in 2 months because he said I was early in the work. He says, you can't go back to the old self. And I didn't understand what the old self was. And so I was angry. Angry was not, I think it was rage. And so my symptoms came back 10 times fold. And that's when I added EFT. I had tried some other modalities, so I can name them for people, but for me, they didn't work. They worked for a lot of other people. And I tried 30 sessions of each. I did Psyche. I did the healing codes. I did hypnosis. I did EMDR, and there was one more modality that'll come to me. The rapid RTT hypnosis method, and nothing was working because I, again, was disconnected from the body and I was using my mind to heal. Now that I'm a trainer of Dr. Dispenza, what we teach, you have to go from thinking to being into doing. So you have to become, believe, behave, become. So if you do not become the new identity and you don't embody it, physically embody it, there won't be any healing. But if you do, now he has all the research and it's on his website and you can see it. And there's a documentary he did, which is already 2 years old.
Yeah, I love Joe Dispenza's work, and his books are incredible. And I've heard that people that have gone to his, workshops or retreats, gone in a wheelchair and walked away from there. Or I've heard about people who have lost their sight and then gained their sight back from the work that he does, which is just mind blowing to me. I'd love to be a part of those retreats at some point. I'm curious to know about the practice. So when we step into this work and it's work we have to do, what's the sort of commitment? Are we meditating for hours? What are we trying to do to, I suppose, untap these emotions and start to heal?
Obstinate person, and I don't let go things easily. So for me, the magic didn't happen as fast. So what I usually do is I wake up in the morning. I try to set my intention if I can before I go out of bed. I do tap a little bit in the morning, like 15 minutes. And then I write down my thoughts. And sometimes I just have these crazy thoughts. They just, I'm sure you had them too. They come out of nowhere. And then I have also some limiting beliefs. That's been the hardest one for me. I have these limiting beliefs and I write them down. And then this is based on Dr. Joe's teaching, and then who I want to be. So once I've cleared and calmed myself down, which doesn't take forever, it takes 15 minutes or something, or sometimes 20, then I meditate. And then I have a meditation. When I started, he had the longer meditation, so I've gone into that habit, but you don't need to do an hour and a half. A half-hour meditation is ample. The challenge is, can you maintain that during your day? That's the hard part. So when things were going very well, I used to have a second meditation in the evening, or I did breath work, which I didn't do, and I do like it, and I may go back. So it didn't have to be a meditation. It could have been some breath work to release some energy. And then I do a longer tapping session for me when things come up. I try to keep that as a practice for myself. Number one, I become a better practitioner, and I still have blind sights because most of my life is the other way, where I was in my head, and it's so I can't expect 5 or 6 years of my life to wipe out 50 something years of my life.
Exactly.
So that is the practice I do. Now, some people, it's easier for them. What I find, the people who don't need to do less, so one of these clients that I have, he can go into the happy state. People who are not super analytical will find a way to stay in the happy states, and they will create the reality much faster.
Okay, that was my next question. It was like, how long did people generally take to have, these transformational experiences? And it sounds like it really depends on the individual.
Yes. If I get the person younger than 35, they clear much faster. So I had a woman with panic attacks, 10 sessions, and they were gone for good. I went through a short period of panic attack. I didn't have it before, but I did. The panic attacks cleared very easy for me. That, for whatever reason, cleared fast. So your age matters. Why? Because your personality gets more hardwired after the age of 35. But if the person is not analytical and is diligent to put some happy experiences in their day. So I tell people in between, don't go and watch a horror movie. Watch something funny. Go to the park. Do something fun so the body can start to feel safe and enjoy life. Do a massage, do anything you like, do some exercise that you enjoy. So it's not just doing meditation and all this hard work. So that actually helps you because now you're retraining your body to enjoy life. And once you start enjoying life, the body feels safe because you can't be dancing and a tiger is here again. That's another thing. So the body starts getting reprogrammed that it's safe.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I think like meditation for me, I sometimes go through a practice of that and I find it helps. But for me, I mean, training, like physically training and moving, I find it's a good way to get out of my head and get into my body, especially if I'm doing like handstands or I'm doing some sort of gymnastics bodyweight stuff. I'm very in tune with what's going on and all the worries of the day or everything else is just not conscious right there. So I find that my escape, and I like breath work too. When I get into the breath work stuff, or maybe I get into an ice bath or the cold ocean, I'm very present. I think that definitely helps me in that sense. I get the impression that for some people, there's continual weeding. Like we've got to keep going back and you've got to keep pulling the weeds and keep replanting. Whereas for other people, maybe there's an opportunity for the change to happen and they don't need to revisit it as much, or no?
Change happens to them sooner is what it
Yeah.
is. Some people, it happens very fast. But you always are going to need moving forward to watch your thoughts and have something that you can do. So you may not have to come to a practitioner anymore, but you will have to use the practice for yourself. You have to find a way to calm the monkey mind. Now, some people advance and they can contemplate reality. I haven't gotten there. Well, sometimes I can, but as a regular practice, I have not skipped a day of meditation in 7 years. Every time I've put it later in the day, the monkey mind is out of control. I don't have to meditate twice a day that I did, but I was a very anxious person, but I didn't show it, but my body felt it. And I was completely disconnected from my body. So I put a nice face, but my stomach, my everything internally, which I was disconnected, was completely off. So for me, it's been a little different because I'm also very stubborn. I didn't let things easily go. Some people, it's easier for them to let go.
How is your stress and anger these days? And off the back of that, how do you manage that now moving forward?
Okay, so my stress is not high. You can see I'm pretty calm. My anger, I get angry and then I reframe. And actually yesterday because there's a ugly situation happening here for a while. And I said, you know what? I am not going to go in attack mode. That's my old default animal way. I'm going to see how can I go from a position of power, prove my facts based on analysis, and trust that I'm going to get what I want. And then I said to myself, because you're in a multi-dimensional hall of mirrors. So every time I attack, I'm actually attacking my mirror. So the energy bounces back to me. So I said, I'm not going to go that way. So I came up with a strategy last night to something that was done, underhanded. And I said, I'm not going to get angry. So I control it pretty fast, not instantaneously, but in a short period of time, maybe in an hour or two, I'm pretty much done and I'm not ruminating on it.
I like the way you stop and you ask yourself better questions and you process that before you act. I mean, we only have to look at social media these days and we can see how everyone gets quite aggressive and everyone acts pretty much on spur. But like that that mirror that you're talking about, it's bouncing back and it's causing more stress and more harm to the individual probably attacking, plus also the individual they are attacking. But I think so many people just need to be able to step back and ask those better questions in those times of anger or frustration, or fear or sadness or whatever they're sort of feeling. I like the way I had another guest on the podcast, and he spoke about like emotions. There's no good or bad emotions. These emotions that we experience are just our body's trying to give us a message, trying to tell us something. And if we can learn to listen to those emotions and ask those better questions, then we can start to obviously choose a better path that's going to be healing or healthy or create maybe the future vision that you've talked about.
And that's correct. And so sometimes in EFT, after they've cleared something, and let's say it's a shoulder that's frozen, I have them imagine it being like an energetic ball or a stick figure sitting in front of them. And I ask them to ask the energy after they transmit love to it without judgment. What does this energy that's created my shoulder not to work feel for me? And you'd be surprised. They get a message, they get an emotion first. Then sometimes they're given an age when it happened and the belief that gets associated. Once all of that is cleared, I ask them to renegotiate with that part if it's willing to do another function. So these biological tracks that German New Medicine calls were created to protect us. So I have a woman now who is paralyzed on one side, and part of the paralysis is because at the time something happened, she couldn't escape. So the body remembers she couldn't escape. And if she can go back in time and we can feel what it felt not to escape, then it's going to clear. And I like to make a caveat here because people are going to be scared. I don't take to relive the experience. So I only go back into the past to get the emotion and the belief. We never relive the experience because it's going to re-traumatize us. Because a lot of people say, why would you want to go back to it? I just need to get that information because that's what's stored in my tissue. So it's cleared. And I'll give you an example for breast cancer, which is common. So a right-handed woman, if she has a baby, she carries the baby and brings it to her chest this way. She uses her left hand and she uses a right hand that is dominant. Women who get cancer in the right breast have a nest conflict. What does that mean? Either they lost a child or this child is in danger. Someone in their family, a partner, there's a conflict. And once you find the track, because that's the message, and you clear that, the body starts to heal the cancer. And these are things that we've learned biologically. I mean, every right-handed woman's going to hold the baby this way.
It's just it's so powerful, isn't it? But like when you put the pieces together, it sort of makes sense. And obviously, you know, if we're seeing people go through these practices and they're healing from it, there's something magical happening there, isn't there?
Yeah. And for me, my personal experience, so I went to the hospital because I had some abdominal pain. And, you know, they kept on saying stuff. And I was already working in surgery at the time, in a surgical practice. So they came up with this diagnosis. And I said, I can't have that because I'm not in the age group. They insisted. So they scared me. And I went in with only abdominal pain. I did have some fever. That's all I had. Nothing else. And before the surgery, I met with a surgeon, and during the prep, they say, we need to do an exploratory surgery because you have something in your abdomen. You have hours to live. That was what they told me. And then the surgeon came, you know, it was in the middle of the night, 3:00 in the morning. He told me the same thing. I have to operate very fast. He just woke up from his sleep because I don't have enough hours. You're not going to make it through the morning. Well, after the surgery, my lungs collapsed. I had pleural effusions. When you look up metaconsciousness, a threat for life will collapse your lungs. It's exactly that happened to me. It took me years to figure it out because I didn't have anything with my lungs. I was breathing perfectly fine. I just had some abdominal pain. Now, the other symptoms that happened because of the incisions explain why I got all this abdominal fluid and then why my organs started failing. So all of these things that they were telling me along the way kept on preparing my body to shut down because I believed what they said. See, Dr. Joe says, once you believe and surrender to it, that's it. So I trusted these people because that's all I knew. I believed they must know better, even though I had a voice. I said, I don't have the symptoms for that age group. I don't match it, and nothing else matches. Turns out I didn't have what they thought I did, but I believed all the other stuff. Therefore, my body started failing.
It's just amazing, isn't it? Like the words we get told and how we absorb those words and take on that belief, the impacts that can have. But I suppose it's not just in the words, it's how we live our life every day, and the beliefs that we tell ourselves or what we get stuck on can just have such, I suppose it could be both ways, isn't it? It could have such a negative impact on our health, or it could have such a positive. So it's making that choice of, okay, well, what's the message I want to be repeating, or what's the story I want to be telling myself? Because if I keep telling the wrong story, it's going to be very harmful to my health in the long run.
Absolutely. And you brought social media. What are they? They're all, I don't watch anything, doom and gloom. And how do we know? We know it from a neuroscience point of view, but we know it with evidence. Why? Because of the placebo effect. You would give patients, they've done studies, it's about 35%. You give them a sugar pill and then they magically heal from conditions. I mean, there are documented stories of it. So we know if you believe in the positive truth, then you're going to heal. But if you fall and believe at this horrific sentence that the doctor, and they've been proven wrong so many times, that then you're going to have challenges. And that's where I went wrong. I literally believed the system because my training was in that. So that's where my degree was. And I couldn't shake it off. Well, the medical text that I read and I studied and I did my thesis said this is true, which is why I said a practitioner working with me has a hard time because I was too stubborn and indoctrinated in those beliefs. But if I can change and get rid of those beliefs, then someone else. So if we are creating our reality, and we are, and I can give you supporting evidence why, 3 studies: the double slit experiment that got the Nobel Prize, the double slit quantum eraser that goes back in time and changes the events, and the 2022 Nobel Prize on non-locality, that everything is rendered as we go along. So you can't be having 3 Nobel Prizes here kind of saying the same thing.
So much we don't know, isn't there? There's so much that it's just like mind blowing when you step into it. I think the social media thing as well. And it's like there's so much going on in the world right now that it's easy to get pulled into the news, or it's easy to get pulled into social media or other people's lives and compare ourselves or get angry at what's going on in the world or frustrated. But then what's the cost of that internally? How do you manage all that noise going on around you?
I do not watch any social media. A couple of people on my floor will call me. I don't want to know. I have a person upstairs who wants to tell me what's happening in the politics. And my answer is always, both parties are corrupt, however it is. And I choose to be in the middle. I have my own beliefs, but I'm not going to go from an attack mode. I have a perfect story that happened to me. So I was traveling standby and everybody was calling me. It was maybe 2 years, 2022, when all the flight cancellations were happening. And my friend calls me the night before. His flight got canceled with the same airline. I said, I don't want to hear it. Could just stop. He says, well, I know you're traveling. I said, I don't want to know because I don't have a confirmed seat. So I go to the airport. The guy at the airport says, I'm at the ticket agent. I said, I don't have a seat. If there's an empty seat, says the morning flight didn't go and it doesn't look very good. I said, well, I don't have another option. So why don't you just put my name on the list? So I had so much fear and panic. I remember that in my body because I was out of the country. So I was tapping and the flight was supposed to leave at 3 and my name wasn't called. So I was a little anxious. I showed up like at 3:05 and they said, no, your name hasn't been called. So I'm tapping and tapping. And I said, there has to be a reality where I got on the plane. Well, 3:03, my name gets called. And everybody would say, but all the flights have been canceled. Your flight only made it out. I said, it did. And now flights are easy for me to do. Other stuff, I can't do it as easy. But this one, because the worst case scenario would have been an inconvenience, go and find a hotel and be stuck there for 2-3 days. I mean, I wasn't going to die. But I was able to tap and clear my fear. And I refused anybody who was telling me otherwise. I didn't want to hear it. So I came back and I did the same thing during the pandemic. I never got sick. No, I didn't want to know what the symptoms are, what is happening. Nothing happened to me. Absolutely nothing happened to me.
Does that have to do with meta consciousness? I've heard you bring up meta consciousness, and that's one
It has
little
to
thing
do
we
a
haven't
couple of things.
tapped into yet. Yeah.
Yeah. So once you pick the frequency from the outside, you're going to vibrate to that. So you're going to start attracting. So the moment you drop your frequency, you're going to be attracting what the collective is saying. Now, if you do believe what social media says on the symptoms, you have two things running. Your subconscious mind is getting programmed. And then, yes, meta consciousness is going to activate the biological track. Did you ever wonder why everybody during the pandemic had lung issues? There's no coincidence. It's as if it's from the book of meta consciousness. The first thing that happens when there's a threat for life, it's immediately a respiratory issue and a difficulty breathing, as if it was like textbook science. For whatever reason, I don't want to say anything. It seems whatever was happening, they were very familiar with German new medicine.
Yeah, it's just incredible, isn't it? Wow. Such insightful information that you've given us, and it's such a powerful sort of thing. I know Joe Dispenza's work, but I've never really had someone to speak to more about it, and it just makes me get even more curious about it now. If there's something you could leave that would help men in midlife reframe or shift, what should they take away from this conversation?
Anything that's happening in their life, they can change. And I'm going to put something a little strange for them. So if it's a health issue, you are not healing this body. You're actually, once you start to heal the thought, your mind and the emotions, you're moving to a parallel version of you. So I know it sounds crazy for people because a lot of times they say, well, I've had this condition for 50 years, therefore I can't heal. But if you know that there's another version of you and you're aligning to that, and there is no yesterday, the yesterday is all in your head. I mean, if you ask in Neuroscience where the yesterday is, no one can find it. So if you start with that, no matter where you're at, you can change. Is everything changeable? Yes, but it depends on how committed you are and how much are you willing to wipe off these limiting beliefs. Now, if you're in a relationship that's horrible, there's another version of you that is better. And if both partners now start working on that together, they create miracles. So I'm working with a couple and they're actually creating. When you have two, it's even more powerful. And assuming they're both aligned. So there is another version of you, wherever you are, whatever it is, that's happier. And that's why we're all into this improvement. If it wasn't our future version calling on us, we'd be long gone. And if you're still on planet Earth, that means there's value for you to be here. And you were just going through a rough stage, because before organization happens, there's usually chaos. When you clean that garden and you take everything out from the soil, it's a mess. And then you have to reorganize it, do whatever you have to do, and then start planting. And it takes time.
Finding that best version of ourselves, not necessarily creating it, but actually stepping into that best version of ourselves.
It's your vibrational match, just like a TV. There's the fear movies on one channel, and there's the happy movies on another channel. So everything is happening right now. There's a version of you that's whole and healthy. And there's a lot of people who talk about it. Donald Hoffman talks about it. Tom Campbell talks about it. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about it. Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden. The names are endless. And we have a couple of Nobel Prizes saying how reality gets created. But we also have the multiverse theories, because now they're believing we're in the multiverse, which we are.
Exactly. Yeah. For any listeners who haven't tapped into any of those resources that you've just talked about, but Joe Dispenza, definitely one of them. I'd recommend that. That's a good place to start, isn't it? To look into this stuff and sort of see what's actually happening there. Sophia, is there anything I haven't asked you about today that you think my audience would like to hear about before we finish up?
You asked me everything, but I wanted to add one more thing with the hacking reality. So when we go into the past and we clear that situation, we do it for two things. Number one, to clear it from the body. And let's say you had a horrible experience and now you release the emotional charge and you see you survived it. So you get a reframe. Oh my goodness, this happened to me and I did not turn out to be a monster. Now, when you use the hacking reality and you keep on reprinting the new memory, that is actually what moves you to the parallel timeline. Because now you're creating a new movie strip in your mind, because your mind is like a movie strip. Everything's recorded and you're moving to another track. And what I can tell you is certain traumatic memories that I have from childhood, it's as if it happened to someone else. I have no emotional charge, where before I would fall apart or I'd be angry or upset. They're just fading. And I didn't believe that was possible, but I met someone who had a YouTube channel. I called him up because he was teaching a book on Itzhak Bentov's book, something about consciousness and the pendulum. The title, it's a rare book. And so I emailed him. I said, do you mind if I could speak to you? I'll pay you. And he told me that he had a horrific childhood and he was very happy and he doesn't have any memories of it. And I said, how can that be possible? And now I know how it's possible.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's an very important point to make. And I appreciate all of your time today, Sophia. It's sparked more curiosity in me around this topic. And I greatly appreciate your time. If people want to connect with you and find out more about the work you do, where can they do that?
They can come to my website, tapintourbestself.com. I offer a 30-minute complimentary session. I also offer a free 75-minute masterclass on a preview of Dr. Joe's course that he used to teach in major organizations and companies like Coca-Cola and Google. And you get a lot of information completely free there. And then I do EFT, and I also do all these other modalities, and I teach his course. It's an honor for me to teach it. If you really want to embody his stuff and can't make it to an event, it's actually the embodiment of the practices. You're welcome to do the course. And you can find me on social media, all of them with Tap Into Your Best Self, with an exception of Facebook, which is tapintouryourbestself.org. And I have a lot of free information. So I take these concepts of quantum physics and the mirrors and whatever it is, and I break it down in layman's terms. And the blogs are for free for people and to understand how these practices work. Because if you don't know how it works and why it works, you're not going to invest in it. But the bigger issue is you don't get good results. You're a trainer. So when you were getting trained, you knew you were doing because it's going to give you that effect. So you even put more effort and you got better results because it knew why it works and how it works. And that is what I'm hoping to do with EFT. So a lot of people don't explain the background. It's not something out there. It is purely scientifically neuroscience based. And that's why I want to approach it that way, to make for people to make sense.
Yeah, I find that the same in the gym. It's like you can put people through a training program, but if they don't understand the why behind what they're doing and how it's going to have effects, well, then they're not going to see as good of results. And it comes down to everything, doesn't it? Like nutrition, sleep, stress management. Like we've got to explain or understand that information so it helps us, I suppose, create the practice and stick to the practice with consistency and belief that we're going to be able to make those changes so that we actually get the results. So I can definitely relate to what you're saying there. Sophia, thank you very much for your time. Greatly appreciated. Yeah, and hopefully we can connect again in the future.
Absolutely. And thank you very much. I appreciate it as well.
That conversation with Sophia honestly gave me a lot to think about. My biggest takeaway is that healing, whether it's physical, emotional, or mental, isn't about doing more. It's about feeling more. It's about slowing down long enough to actually notice what's going on inside of you instead of just trying to push through it. I've realized a lot of men, myself included, spend years trying to outwork their emotions when what they really need is to listen to them. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with a mate who might also need to hear it. And if you want to keep doing this kind of inner work with other men who get it, join us inside the Midlife Maverick School community. It's free to join, and it's where these conversations continue. You'll find the link in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in. Take care of yourselves, stay curious, and keep doing the work. I'll see you next time.